Welcome to the Daily Objective, date 120 of the war in Israel. Hey, James, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing, Razi?
I'm doing great. What better way to start off the weekend than waking up early on a Saturday morning and talking about Piers Morgan?
Well,
I, I,
it's normally morning for me. It just happens to be morning for you as well now. So it's a good thing I'm a
yeah,
morning person.
yeah. You like to wake up very early. I wake up pretty late. There's got to be a middle ground. We can't all be extremists. There's got to be some sort of
That's
proportionality
right.
here.
That's
Um,
right. No black and whites here. Yeah, right.
Yeah, which is Piers Morgan, I think, in a nutshell. I mean, his coverage of the war in Israel has been despicable in a unique way. It's not the full-on support for Hamas that you see elsewhere. It's this oddly enough, he's this moral equivalence with which he takes the moral high ground, where he says, "Well, yeah, killing Israelis is bad, and killing Palestinians is also bad. Um, Hamas killed Israelis, and now Israel is killing Palestinians. Yeah, everybody's bad, right?"
Killing as such is bad. And that is, of course, an intrinsicist approach to morality. With Pierce Morgan in general, I can't say that I am particularly an expert because I don't follow people who are basically celebrity chasing tabloid types. And that's how this guy's whole career began. I guess I first was aware of him when he was part of the show America's Got Talent and then Britain's Got Talent. And so he's kind of like a celebrity chasing tabloid reporter. And now that he's moved into more serious reporting, I don't know what his qualifications are for doing this in general. But you're absolutely right. He is righteous about his lack of moral compass. That is to say, he is ideologically anti-ideological, from what I can tell. For example, just recently he uploaded a debate between Cenk, who we've discussed on this channel before, and Dennis Prager. And, there he is negotiating the difference between those two. He does appear to be principled about his fence sitting and righteous about his lack of righteousness about either side. Yeah, that's the cult of moral grayness. It really is. Name of a
Yeah.
famous article by Ayn Rand.
So his history, yeah, he's pretty well known in the UK. He hosted a morning show for a while. I think in the US he replaced Larry King, right, on CNN,
Yeah.
and that didn't really work out. And
Oh,
he
he's
won
been
the
fired.
Celebrity Apprentice on a interesting
Oh
season.
yeah, he got to know Trump through Apprentice. Yeah. Oh no, but that's the thing. He's like a celebrity tabloid type reporter. I don't think of him as a serious historian or political analyst. He's certainly no expert on military affairs. He's certainly no expert on economic affairs. I don't know what his background is. Does he have?
Actually, if I'm not mistaken, he was the editor of one of a British tabloid. Um,
Yes, I think the Sun, and he was the
yeah.
celebrity guy, and that was before Murdoch hired him over at the Mirror, I think. But so I guess I have more Piers Morgan knowledge than I'm aware of
Well, the Sun was owned by Murdoch.
by Murdoch,
Still is, I believe.
and
Uh,
he was kind of the celebrity reporter there, right?
I don't know. I don't go that far back in my Piers Morgan history. I mean, I've been aware of his career for a while, but it is this recent conflict that really brought him to the forefront, at least for me. You'd see him pop up from time to time, interviewing a vegan while eating a hamburger, and just kind of nice, jokey things like that, but nothing actually substantive. And yeah, his show on Talk TV is called Piers Morgan Uncensored, and the idea of uncensored, it's not government isn't coming after me. It's I'm basically giving a platform to everybody, and he's done this since October 7th very consistently. He's given the voice, he's given a platform to people who were full on pro-Hamas and supportive of October 7th. And he's brought on people who are from the pro-Israel side. And of course, Douglas Murray is a regular on that channel. So he's been on. And I mean, that in and of itself, the fact that you have a platform and don't give it to people who air certain views is not a violation of their right to free speech.
Mm.
It's not censorship that we here on this channel don't have people explaining to us why it's great to behead babies. Um,
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, when you have Senk on and you give him license to lie and spread the hateful anti-Semitic stuff that Senk spreads, I mean, to really believe what Senk believes and then to give it that credibility and sanction is really astonishing. And, he does have this view of censorship as people not getting the right to be heard, say on social media or something. There was in America this last week, the social media giant CEOs were all hauled before the Senate, a Senate committee, and confronted about the effects on minors of social media. And one very righteous senator said, "Will you apologize to the children that have died because of social media?" None of them, of course, are responsible. None of the conservatives there would have said the same about a gun manufacturer, for example. But of course, our self-righteous folks on both the left and the right who want to censor social media were demanding an apology. And Zuckerberg Facebook owner, was the only guy who turned around and apologized, accepted that unearned guilt, apologized, and Piers Morgan practically knights Zuckerberg. Yes, he's of course responsible. Yes, of course he's this bad guy, but at least Zuckerberg apologized. You see, so his belief about censorship does include, let's see, blaming social media for things that are not their fault and joining in on the righteous attack on social media, which is actually the censorship, by the way. When government is pressuring social media to do this or that, that's when we start knocking on the door of censorship, Mr. Morgan, not when the social media giant turns around and accepts the unearned guilt for running a social media platform.
Yeah. So blaming social media who provide a platform where people can post whatever they want, more or less, as opposed to blaming himself for having people on justifying October 7th and
Right.
not thinking what impact this is going to have. And by the way, you mentioned Cenk. Cenk is the least bad of the pro Hamas people he's had on, and especially the fact that he's had him on with Douglas Murray is if anything, it's a PR stunt for Israel, because having Cenk debate Douglas Murray is not a good look for the pro Hamas side. Um, but yeah, having people. So I just one of the things I watched now in preparation was a more recent interview with Ben Shapiro, and he talks about this operation in the hospital, where soldiers dressed up as whoever and waltzed into the hospital and killed terrorists. And he says something like this is a war crime and so on. Now, again, when we hear from the Owen Joneses of the world, this is a war crime, completely out of context. Not saying it's a war crime to sit in a hospital and plan terrorist attacks. What do you expect from them? By the way, war crime is one of those terms, international law terms that people throw out there that I take the same way I take as somebody saying, pineapple on pizza is a culinary crime. Or fashion crime. That's what war crime is to me.
It's a fashion crime.
Free countries should not go to war in the first place unless they have a reason to, and then any crime would be a crime against their own people in not executing that war in the quickest and most decisive way. So
Agreed.
yeah, but of course, Piers Morgan, it's like any as you said, any killing, any operation that results in the killing of anybody is wrong and morally equivalent. And yeah, it
You
works for
know,
him. Let's put it that
there's a television show that was on several years ago that was based on the Borgias, the notorious Renaissance family that produced popes and Cesare Borgia and Lucrezia Borgia, the infamous the poisoner. And one scene in the thing, a cardinal and two nuns are being attacked by a group of thugs, and the cardinal actually. This is a sin under Catholicism for a clergyman to do this, but the cardinal kills the attackers who are obviously going to rape the nuns and kill them all. And his response, his line that I find so revealing, And it's so revealing about the ethics that conditions people on this matter. He says, sisters, sometimes a little badness is necessary to protect goodness. And if that's the way you look at it, if all killing is intrinsically evil, if killing as such is evil, if even killing in self-defense is evil, then of course you are giving license to all the worst murderers in the world. You're saying that you're in effect being like a Christian that says turn the other cheek. And of course, Christianity has corrupted and polluted the mind of the West such that they actually have this intrinsicist view about lying or killing or whatever it is, rather than a contextual, reality-based ethics, which of course objectivism uniquely provides. But this idea that any killing as such is bad. And so therefore, all we need to do is count the numbers of people dead on one side from October 7th and count the number of people that Israel's killed so far since then, and look at how much worse. It's genocide what Israel's doing. No, if it were 10 times the number, if it was the number required to end the threat, it would be justified and morally required. And morally required. It's insane. He also buys in, from what I can gather from these debates, to the idea that the Palestinian people are all innocent. You know, they are 100% innocent. There isn't a guilty Palestinian civilian out there, not a one of them. As opposed to the reality, of course, which is the vast majority of Palestinian civilians support the Hamas, if not October 7th, something like October 7th, again and again and again. 3/4 of the people, something like that, on the West Bank supported October 7th. So it is factually unrealistic, and it is morally intrinsicism, I think, based in a kind of Kantian or Christian intrinsicism about killing, which so pollutes the way people discuss war these days. It would never have been discussed like that during World War II, for example. We
Yeah,
would see the obscenity of it.
and and the way Israel is fighting is about one step removed from turning the other cheek, and that's the problem. Though that one step, I think that's the problem for the Piers Morgans of the world, when they look at this conflict. Another example was, right after the Palestinian Islamic Jihad fired a misfired rocket fell on the parking lot of the Al Ali hospital. Right after that happened, and the media reported it as Israel bombs hospital, kills 500 bodies, which were counted in about 30 seconds. Piers Morgan was another one of those people who immediately attacked Israel for this. But he also attacked Israel for something they did do, and I think were right to do, was you remember when they bombed the ambulance or ambulances where terrorists were.
Yeah.
So it's an ambulance. So this idea that, again, the terrorists choose to use something that they know by Western rules, which were made up by the West in a way that only ties the hands of the West and not the West's enemies. You cannot bomb an ambulance. So that's why they use an ambulance, and that ambulance, all it had in it was terrorists. So if you're harming any civilians in any way, it's that this ambulance maybe at some point in the future might be used as an ambulance, and not as a terrorist delivery device.
No, talk about while he's parroting Hamas propaganda, and all those Western journalists, of course, who talk like that are taking the Hamas line, Hamas is using Palestinian civilians on purpose, intentionally. They always have. They use schools, hospitals, residential facilities on purpose, precisely for this. If you say, look, the terrorists are using that, you can't hit an ambulance, even if you think terrorists are using it, then obviously you've just been sucked into the vortex of Hamas propaganda, and you're repeating it. Either you're truly evil or you're just a useful idiot for Hamas. Take your pick.
Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. In a more recent show that Piers Morgan did with Cenk Uygur, which we talked about in an episode, the second time we talked about Cenk, I think this came up then. So in the interview, Piers Morgan says at some point, actually, no, this is not a more recent one. This is something I watched more recently, but was shortly after the attack and before Israel started its ground operation. So Piers says Israel should end the occupation now. And this kind of brings us back to what we talked about yesterday with the UK, offering to recognize a Palestinian state. There's something about this word now in this context that bothers me more than anything else. This idea that Israel is an occupying force and should uh, change that in any way is of course something I oppose, except in the other direction. I think Israel needs to have a permanent presence, military and civilian in Gaza, and expand its presence certainly militarily in the West Bank. But this idea that now after October 7th, what Israel needs to do is step back. There's a question about where one comes to that conclusion from, morally, from in terms of his historical knowledge. I'm sure Piers Morgan knows better and knows the history of capitulation and where that leads, and yet he pushes that line.
Oh, if you'd asked him about Churchill and versus, Chamberlain in the 30s with Hitler, I'm sure he would have said, "Oh, yes, the British first appeased, and that's what gave Hitler the green light." And he'd tell you all about, give you a lecture about appeasement, I'm sure. But in the current context, totally, what do you, well, huh? And the discussions about Iran, for example. Oh, and I have to say, the president of the United States is finally getting around to shooting some warehouses of proxies. I understand that some proxies may have been killed, but until and unless we attack Iran itself, Iran doesn't talk about people who don't care about other human beings. They don't care about the lives of their proxies. And I doubt that Iran will be affected by Biden's avoidance of Iran, which is what it sounds like it's going to be, too little, too late, and not at the right place. But of course, we don't want, and Piers Morgan will be the first to say this, we can't have escalation. We can't, oh my goodness, the worst thing that what the West could do would be to get sucked into this war for Israel and be part of this escalation. I've heard that from him as well very recently. But he's got it all backwards, upside down, morally inside out. We are appeasing Iran, and Iran will be continuing. We're appeasing the terrorists. You're going to get more October 7th, Mr. Morgan. Promise. If Israel isn't allowed to take care of things. I said yesterday, I'll say again, the Palestinian people are not fit to govern themselves. So long as they're capable of doing October 7th, celebrating October 7th, and the vast majority of them support October 7th, these people are not fit to govern themselves.
Yeah, and when we do get more October 7th, Piers Morgan will condemn it, and then he will condemn the response and explain why settlements are the reason. Thank you, Cargo Crew, for the super chat. Thank you, Kirsten, for the super chat. Kirsten says, late. Why are civilians being returned to their homes prematurely? Wouldn't it make Israel's job easier if surrounding countries house civilians in army supervised tents or shelters until Hamas is eliminated? I mean, my view on this is definitely that they should be not there by whatever military means are necessary. Whether, again, I would target terrorists where they are without risking soldiers, which would mean many civilians would die, but soldiers would not, or way fewer soldiers would, maybe in following
It is
operations.
a moral crime to put your soldiers at risk because
And
they're using, especially in this context, when they're using their civilians as a shield. It's to
yeah,
be
but
sucked into their strategy.
I also want to say that I think Israel should encourage at least much of the population in Gaza and encourage, by encourage, I mean force
Yeah,
to go.
you have to ask yourself why Egypt and Syria and Jordan aren't taking in Palestinians. They too want to use Palestinian civilians. They would rather see the bad headlines as Palestinians suffer in the Gaza Strip than take them in and actually alleviate the suffering. And so they can blame it all on Israel. Not even on a temporary basis. But of course, these people, Egypt and Jordan, know these people are largely terrorists and terrorist sympathizers. So of course they don't want them in.
And yeah, to Kirsten's question, yeah, I'm also shocked, even within the context of understanding what Israel is doing, while I think it should be doing much more, even there, I don't understand why they're letting people come back to the north, that again, you don't know who is armed and who is planning what, and yeah, that should absolutely not happen. So I don't have an answer, but I don't have an answer for much of what Israel does. What we are advocating here is far away from what Israel is actually doing, and
I'm afraid so. I'm
uh,
afraid that the policies of Israel and America that have only set us up here for what happened. And I'm afraid that what we're doing now will not prevent it from happening again and again, just like the leader of Hamas said.
So I had another point. I do want to thank Apollo Zeus for the super chat and Larry Green for the super chat. Larry says, "Looking sharp, Razi, but does your smartphone still recognize you?"
You are looking
Yeah,
sharp.
that's this is an iPhone. It's not a Samsung. So yes, it does. Um, so another thing I saw with Piers Morgan, some of it is these talking points that he maybe delivers better than others, but none of them are unique to him. And one is isn't all this killing, Israel went in without a plan, and isn't all this killing going to end up radicalizing future generations? And again, I go back to like let's look to history for lessons on that. Are the German people radicalized now? Are the Japanese people radicalized? No. The post 9/11 world, Muslim world, is radicalized because they see the West, led by the U.S., as a paper tiger. Because when Japan hit Pearl Harbor, war was declared immediately. America didn't go around asking for permission to retaliate. And after 9/11, America did that. The first thing they dropped on Afghanistan was food and medicine. So yeah, humanitarian aid is not unique to Israel.
And
And yeah, they
does it get
fought with kid
does it
gloves.
does it get Israel any credit to drop leaflets and send text messages? Does it give the U.S. any credit? Does it de-radicalize these people when
No.
Israel and America? No, it has no such effect. More than that, the only way you're going to get through to these people is with force. Quite the opposite. If you want to de-radicalize someone, get their attention in the hardest way you can possible. These folks believe in an all-powerful Allah and that everything happens according to the will of Allah. And if things go badly against them, I mean, look, America and Israel could take out Iran. No problem. No problem. Indeed, if Israel wanted, as we've pointed out many times, if Israel really did have genocidal intent, he could have depopulated Gaza many weeks ago, just with conventional weapons. No, being humanitarian in your war will get you no brownie points for your altruistic humanity. No, and in fact, being less than decisive. In fact, it is the lack of moral decisiveness and clarity on the part of our leaders, frankly, that encourages and radicalizes and continues the radicalization. We are, more committed to our cause than you guys are, is their attitude. And so long as we give them that encouragement, that sanction, they will continue to do it. So he's got it exactly wrong. We need to stand up. We need to stand up with moral clarity. And that moral clarity by itself will help de-radicalize them.
Yeah, the Palestinian terrorist whose phone call was published, to his parents, where he says, "Dad or Mom, I killed 10 Jews with my own hands, and they're so proud of him." Now I don't know where that particular terrorist is right now, if he's dead, if he's back in Gaza fighting,
Hopefully he's dead. Yeah,
if he's one of those, because some people who participated are back are back in Gaza. They're fighting. They may have been arrested by Israel. They may have been arrested and already released. They may have been arrested and will be released in the next exchange. That's what radicalizes. That the getting away with it is what will help radicalize. Not just again, look at the way this is going to be seen in the Arab world. This is a victory. This is a great
oh,
success.
totally. They're
They
celebrating right now
invaded
a huge
Israel. They
victory.
slaughtered Jews. They tortured people to death. They committed the worst atrocities imaginable. They live streamed themselves on Facebook, and the world is now on their side, and they're getting away with it.
Of
That
course.
is what will radicalize current
You
and
know
future
what will really
generations.
radicalize it is if Lord David Cameron's proposal of recognizing the Palestinian state upon a ceasefire or sometime in the near future comes to pass. If Lord David Cameron, the foreign minister of the United Kingdom, gets his way, they will totally sanction, totally protect, and totally encourage more October 7th. I'm afraid this two-state solution is not. Think how naive they are. We give the Palestinians a state, then suddenly they'll stop. They'll live in peace and harmony with Jews and the rest of the world. Really? How incredibly evasive and screwed up in your head do you have to be to believe that a population that celebrates October 7th will be satisfied if given a state? No, if given a state, that's a green light to destroy Israel altogether and to fulfill their stated goal of genocide. Because these are the folks with the overt stated goal of genocide, not Israel.
There was a tweet maybe a week ago or so, which I responded to. You can find on my Twitter at Razi Ginzberg. So I will. But this was the tweet. So there was this. Did you hear about this restaurant in Jordan called October 7th? So somebody tweeted about that, and then somebody named Ibrahim from Los Angeles. Maybe we should go pay him a visit. Says, I'm not sure if this is real either. I bet it isn't. But for reference, October 7th for the Arab population was a day that Palestinians broke out of their concentration camp. It has a very different symbolism than it does in the rest of the world. Now, this is so telling. I don't know if he realizes. He lives in Los Angeles. You would expect he has some knowledge of Western culture that doesn't come from pure, Muslim propaganda. This is somebody who doesn't. He just said basically. He said what the West is trying to talk itself. The fact that the West is trying to talk itself out of recognizing, which is in the Arab world, October 7th is a good thing, and more of it, and doing it again and again until Israel is annihilated, as Hamas has promised. That's a good thing. That's something to strive for. So, not being decisive against, there's no. Where are you going to go by with radicalizing people by defeating them? As opposed to saying we're going to sit back, we're gonna give you what you ask for, or something in the middle between what you ask for and us living. And yeah, so this idea of radicalization should be put into the context of, and I think it's not put into the context of, in the Arab world, and the Palestinians are the worst culture among the Arabs. There is complete hatred for Israel, complete hatred for the Jews. There is no solution. There's definitely no two-state solution. There's no solution where the Jews are allowed to live, basically.
You know how I can tell he comes from Los Angeles? He's appealing to moral relativism. They have their truth and we have our truth, and there's no resolution to the truth. And so it's and notice also the insultingly genetic determinism almost that is implied here. People believe what they believe because they're the people that they are, not because of facts or logic or reason. You can't appeal to an individual's reason here. No, 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 no. It's collectively conditioned, as we all know. Yeah, he is deep. If he was fully into the Al Jazeera propaganda, he would have simply said October 7th is a good thing and everyone should recognize it. No, he's comparing the perceptions on the two different sides. That shows that he's a product of American culture. He can't distinguish evil culture from a more civilized culture.
I
That's
just have to say,
basically the
because
upshot of living in LA.
I looked at my notes again, and this point that Piers was making in the days after October 7th, saying Israel needs to. So the point he was actually making was Israel needs to end the occupation now for peace. And it's there's something comfortable about being the host of the show. I actually saw him interview Alex Jones, and
There
who's
is no one he won't interview, by the way.
yeah.
Whether it's Andrew Tate, Alex Jones, you name it, he will interview them. Cenk,
Yeah.
yes, no problem there. Yeah.
But Alex Jones was complaining, and I think he was right in this one instance, about not being allowed to speak. Piers was going on and on. Piers started with like a 5-minute monologue about how horrible Alex Jones is, and then didn't actually let him. Like, he responded a little bit, and then he cut him off, and he said, "Well, this is my show." So when it's your show, it's easy not to not to have to answer questions or not to have to explain what it is you're saying. How is ending the occupation, as Piers Morgan calls it, right after October 7th, saying this just happened, we are going to run away. We're just gonna run. How is that going to advance peace? There is no explanation. There is no explanation on from anyone on this side how more of what Israel has been doing in the last 30 something years is not going to result in more of what Israel has been getting in the last 30 something years, which is more and more terrorism culminating in October 7th.
The failure here is obvious. Decades of appeasement. Decades of appeasement is the problem. No one stops to ask causally what got us into the position where an October 7th happened. No, that I guess is above Mr. Morgan's pay grade, because it's the kind of words that he uses, the poor conceptualization of this, that actually caused October 7th. And so if if Mr. Morgan was a little bit more on the ball, he'd realize that the language coming out of his mouth has something to do with October 7th. But I don't expect that anytime soon.
Yeah, James, as I said in the start, there's no better way to spend the weekend than talking about Piers Morgan. We can make a 48-hour live stream out of this, but unfortunately we can't, because the Philosophy Forum for Ayn Rand Center UK members at the platinum level and above should have started a minute ago, but we can't help ourselves.
You guys should become subscribers, because those
Yeah.
discussions on Saturday, led by Marco and Richard, are outstanding. They're a blast too. You're missing all kinds of fun. You're missing all kinds of mind-expanding and enlightening material. So, consider becoming a paid subscriber, because those
Yeah.
discussions are really great.
And the link to become a member is in the live chat and in the description. Again, the Philosophy Forum is for platinum and above. There are many other perks for other levels of membership. I hope you will consider becoming a member. Thanks, James. And we'll be back with the Daily Objective and the Reality Show Extra tomorrow.
Be well.
We have two more super chats that just came in.
All right. We have two super chats that just came in, so we will read them. Yeah, we read super chats. Andreo says, I got the distinct feeling Morgan is playing two sides of for the media spotlight. That's something we should have addressed in the episode. That's a good super chat to bring in. Yeah,
I agree. Yes, I think that's what he is. I think he's a professional fence sitter.
Yeah, and there's a question. It's interesting that we just brought up the interview with Alex Jones. Alex Jones, didn't he actually admit in court that he was bullshitting people just because it makes him money? Yeah, that could be the case. I think, I don't know which is actually worse. Him playing a character, knowing that it's doing well for him, he's going to be successful with it, but that he's actually a force for evil in the world, or actually believing the crap that he said.
That's a hard call.
Jeff Bannister, thank you for the super chat. He says, the new format is bringing in new viewers. Please use the Jonathan Hoenig method of tying in Ayn Rand to the topics more. She is the reason many of us are here. We do that. I mean, we do that, in conversation, even when it's not on shows. But we want to do it kind of naturally. So
we do, and I try. You will note that I did observe that the moral intrinsicism that is involved in thinking that all killing is bad. We try to work it in. The perspective that you're getting here, whether or not we cite an essay like The Cult of Moral Grayness or something, is a perspective where people can have disagreements. Obviously, reasonable minds can differ, but we all share the same philosophical principles in any case. But you're right, Jeff. We need to incorporate that explicitly and every time. Thank you.
Yeah, and I will say to viewers who found us recently, due to our coverage of the war, yeah, we do come at this from the philosophy of Ayn Rand. We recommend looking into her work. It has changed our lives, and I think it'll change yours as well. But yeah, our topics are going to be commentary from the perspective of Rand's philosophy. Yeah. All right. And the philosophy forum is more heavily philosophical. And yeah, also I encourage people who are new as well to tune into that and become members. All right. We're gonna wrap up for the last time. Any more super chats will be read tomorrow. Thank you, James. We'll see you tomorrow.